I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
So on today's episode, we have the incredibly brilliant and passionate Chantal Landreville, who is a relationship coach extraordinaire.
Yes, she's a love and relationship coach, and she's also an author of Raise Your Love Signal.
Yeah.
She's all about attracting the right kind of love and keeping it.
Yes.
So she's going to come on today to talk about the top things that actually kill a relationship.
Yeah.
Which is going to be an interesting sort of
Love it.
perspective that we haven't really delved into yet. So welcome, Chantal. Well, welcome.
So
welcome,
let's
Chantal.
dive right in.
Yes.
Okay. We have a lot to talk about because you have a lot of information to share and we want it all.
All right.
No pressure.
And so for so many people that come into our office, they've come when everything's gone to shit, basically, right? Their relationship is done. It's dead in the water. There's nothing really left. And they feel like they have no other choice but to separate and divorce. But there is some work that you can do before you get to that point, right? And we want to talk today about what you can do and what are the signals and the signs of, a relationship that is failing or needing some help.
I'm curious too about from your perspective, when is it worth the work and when is it better to call it quits? So let's get into all of that. Okay, so you have a top 5 list about what kills a relationship.
Yeah. I have a lot more than 5, but top 500 list. And I feel like people are going to be nodding their head. Yeah, that's my husband. That's my wife. Yeah, she does that. He does that. But what are they?
So number 1 is dismissing.
Oof.
Dismissing for me is important when somebody takes the time to communicate their needs, their feelings, and then what are you talking about? No, that's not true. It's completely dismissing. Yeah. So you don't feel honored or respected or you feel threatened at the end of the day. Why would I share my feelings if I'm always going to be dismissed? So that's number 1. Number 2 is lack of listening, where you're not paying attention when someone is actually sharing their things too. We don't, I call this thing actually when my communications masterclass, active versus passive listening, where you're always listening to respond versus really being present to what the person is saying to you. Yeah. And we often make assumptions as well as to, this is what I understood when the person spoke to me, where that's why I always say, ask for clarification. And did I understand? Is this what you're actually telling me? There's nothing wrong with that, asking for clarity, because we're so different. We're so unique. We come from different family backgrounds. We come from different ways of being raised, school, travel, whatever that is. So for us to assume that the other person literally thinks like we do or processes is no. So I always ask the question, did I understand you correctly? Yeah. Is this what you're actually sharing? Is this really how you feel? It makes a big difference.
It really does. This is what we do in mediation all of the time.
Yes.
We're and now I've even parlayed this into my own relationship where I'm like, what did you just hear me say? Yeah. Because your reaction, or again, for my clients, I'm like, what did you hear? Pause. Because I can already see your body language has changed. And, they're coming at you with I'm going to respond to that.
Yeah.
But you're responding to something completely different.
Yes.
Yeah. And the rephrasing too, I find helps with that too. So I will say to them, I'm hearing this. And it might be completely different than the message they actually want to send me.
Agreed. Because oftentimes too, when we're in reactive mode, which is often what's happening, we get caught, our nervous system gets caught up and we're saying things that we don't really want to say or don't even think about saying. So that's why it's the pause is important, where it's let me take a deep breath here and really process. So I love that you actually say that, if I'm hearing you right. Okay, so we're on number 3. What else? I'm probably not going with
accountability. I think that's a big one.
Accountability is massive. Yeah. Because I would say accountability and taking ownership. We often don't take ownership when something happens. And I've learned the hard way because I used to be a control freak. I was single for 18 years. So I was used to just, thinking me, myself, and I. So when I got into my relationship, I realized very quickly that, okay, it's not always about me. And in a relationship, it's we, it's not me. Yeah. And I think people often forget this in relationship. And I say a relationship is a threesome. It's you, your partner, and the relationship. And the relationship has an entity of its own. And you always, always have to think, how is my attitude? How is my need for being right? How is, my comment going to service the relationship? If you are able to create that little inner chat in your mind, and I remember when Chantal said this, where it's like 98.5% of the time, it's not servicing the relationship. So then you're like, take a deep breath, pull back, and it's like, okay, like take it easy. So, and oftentimes too, when we're, again, in a conflict situation or having an argument or just frustrated, we get triggered, I would say. It's often not even about your partner. It's all the old stuff that comes up. So it's always important to just like identify. So, okay, what's going on here? What's really happening?
Right.
Does this really have to do with my partner? Is it me that's like reacting? And so taking accountability for your own emotions, for your own actions.
Yeah.
And I think there's an ego component.
I was
going to
say,
right?
and also a self-awareness
it's like
component.
To be able to, and then to be able to acknowledge, I screwed up.
I fucked that
Yeah.
up.
And that to me is like, is the secret sauce, I think, is to be able to say, I did screw it. I did screw up. I'm human. Yeah, I did it.
There's so much more power in that than the need of being right. Because at the end of the day, yes.
Dr. Phil talks about right fighting.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God, I love him. I love him.
I haven't listened to him in a long
Oh my God.
time.
So, but I remember it's something that stuck with me that Dr. Phil once said, which is sometimes it's better to be kind than right. And that always sits with me because you don't always need to fight and prove that you were right. Even if you were, so what?
I know there's a level of maturity, I think, in that of being able to.
I think that relates into a relationship. It's just like, you know what? Pick your battles. If you're constantly proving that you were right, that's going to break down the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And there's no, as I said, I repeat it. It's like it's we, not me. So there's no value in you being right in an argument, because then it kind of destroys trust. It destroys the fact that if somebody's already having difficulty communicating and expressing themselves, they'll shut down. So it creates all kinds of like other things in the background. And I would say you said something earlier that's, for me, one of the keys to succeed in any given relationship is the self-awareness component. The more, and people don't take the time to really know themselves. So the more you understand why you are the way you are, why you get triggered, why you get reactive, it's a much different conversation than going nitpicking. And I want to give an example if that's okay. So a couple months ago, we were on vacation, me and my fiance, and I had just had an argument with one of the ladies in our group that we were traveling with. And she said some pretty mean stuff. And I was just like so taken off guard and didn't know how to react in the situation because it's not my friend group. It's his friend group. So I'm just like, let me like process this. And I'm sitting in a car. We're driving down to lunch. And he's like, are you okay? Like, are you mad at me? And no, I'm not mad at you. I'm just in my own head. Don't worry. I'm just like, leave me alone. I'm fine. And then like 10 minutes later, he asks me the same thing. Are you mad at me? And I'm like, what? I just, why is this bothering you so much? And he finally said to me, he's like, Chantal, this is reminding me of when I was a kid, that his dad was an alcoholic. He'd come home, he'd walk on eggshells, never knowing what to expect. Am I going to get beaten, slapped, like whatever? And he goes, this energy right now is just making me feel really uncomfortable and threatened. Wow. So that's a lot of self-awareness.
Yes. Green flag. Talk about a big green. Like that's amazing for him to be able to really pull that out.
1,000%. Yeah. So that right there, what do you think? How do you think that we could have built up in our arguments? And I just said, thank you for sharing that with me. Wow, I can actually change my whole attitude right now. And the vibe changed completely. But that takes self-awareness because he understood where the trigger and why he was being bothered. So if he wouldn't have known that, we would have continued like nitpicking and biting. Yeah, biting. Okay, so we kind of went like full circle here.
We told you we were going to go off.
I told you. You don't even know what's happening, and we've taken you on this dark road of like,
okay.
Yeah. Passive aggressiveness, which I think is present in every relationship at some point.
Well, we take each other for granted, right?
Yeah,
it's like anybody that you're living 24/7 at one point. Like if you're having a bad day, you just take it out on your partner. So it's like, I would even say like it's contempt. So
Right.
it's being aware of that. And again, a word that you said that I actually talk about in my book is kindness. Kindness and tenderness can go a long way over again. Like, it's okay. You can have a shitty day and say you have attitude with your person, but being able to apologize or circle back saying, you know what, I'm so sorry. I was in a shitty mood this morning. I apologize. That can go so far
It really
instead of like
does.
not saying anything, not taking ownership of it,
Yeah.
right? Because everybody has a bad day.
And will continue to do so.
Yes.
It's going to come up
And
again.
I try to be like that with my kids too. As you're talking, I'm thinking about like with my own kids, like if you're having a bad day, tell your kids that
Yeah.
Yes.
so that they don't feel like if there's you're tense or whatever, you're stressed out. I've said to my kids, you know what? I'm really stressed out today, or I'm really upset about something, nothing to do with you. I'm just having a tough day. Like, I think that being able to label it and show your kids that you're not perfect, or show your partner
Yes.
or even if it's a friend or a colleague, you know what? Having one of those days.
And it also
It-
reaffirms that it's not them.
Yes.
Right?
yes.
So your kids are now not walking on eggshells because like, oh, mom's
Exactly.
mad. Was it
Yes.
something
Mom's
I did?
dealing with something. You know what? Like,
Yeah.
look at her. She's frustrated too. I was frustrated. Remember when you were
Yeah.
frustrated last
Yeah.
week?
Yeah.
I'm feeling that way today.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
the role model.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. So I think that goes,
Massive.
in all relationships, whether they be with your kids, your partners, your friends, anything.
Yeah, I like it's Brene Brown, I believe, and her. She's talking about her and her husband, and they'll walk in the door and they're like, "Okay, I'm at about a 20 today," and
Yeah.
so the other one's like, "Okay, I've got 80. I'll fill it for you. I got your
Love
back."
that.
But to just be that open and honest, and again, it's self-awareness, right? To walk in the door and go, "I had a real bad day. I am not going to be
Yeah.
pleasant. I need you to handle dinner or bath time or whatever because I got to go for a run or I got to get out of here or whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be able to say that, and then they're like, "Yeah, I got you," because
you.
it's a partnership. At the end of the day, that's the whole point.
Yep.
Is I'm never going to be a perfectly, not you complete me in that kind of sense, but
I hate that sentence.
I hate it. It's absolute bullshit. So I'm not even going to quote it.
You
But
need to complete yourself.
Yes. you
yeah,
can
but
put
you're
in order
not
to
going to
be
be
compatible with someone
100%
else.
every day.
No, you're not. And
No.
that's where kindness, tenderness, respect amongst in a
And
relationship
vulnerability.
and vulnerability, 100%, that, you got each other's back. You never feel threatened. I can be okay. I'm the kind of person that when I'm having a bad day, or if we do get in an argument, I get really emotional.
Mhm.
And I know this of me because of my self-awareness. So I've communicated that
Yeah.
with my partner. So I need time out. I can't have or manage this conversation right now. I need to go
Yeah.
flush it out to
Yeah.
come back because I'm going to say mean things. I'm going to
Right.
say things but again, that's being able to pause and recognize what it is that you need. And that's a massive thing too in a relationship. We don't communicate our needs. We have the expectation that our partner should know and read our mind.
Yeah.
We assume. So
Yeah.
it's that's a massive relationship killer. Stop thinking that your partner
Is reading
knows
your mind.
exactly. Yeah, because listen,
not.
I'm very intuitive, but I certainly don't read minds.
No.
I also people talk about love languages. Oh, love languages are so popular. They have their moment in the spotlight. What about your fight language? Like, I always feel that that's a
Yes.
missing component where
Yeah.
you need to figure out early on in a relationship what that looks like. Like you just said, I just need time out. I might get emotional. I might say things, whatever, but at least you're upfront about it.
Yeah.
People wait until they're thrown in and they could have combative, opposite fight styles. And then it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, but see how everything kind of full circle back is that if you don't have your self-awareness, if you don't know yourself enough to recognize what do I need when I'm in an argument?
Yeah.
Do I need time out? Do I want to have the conversation right away? Most people don't. So
Yeah.
really take the time to ask yourself questions. What do I need? And then tell it to your partner. And then the other thing is as a receiving end, because I always say everything is ping ponging, right? You have to be able to give as much as you receive. It's a two-way street. It's not, one-sided. So not to take it personally. So in this case, as we're talking about the same thing, if I need my time out, come back, circle back, I could have said, I need time out. He could have taken it personally saying, no, I want to have this conversation now. But this
push
is
and
where
push.
you need to respect
Yeah.
and accept when your
Yeah.
partner is communicating their needs to you. You really need to be able to say, okay, I got you. Again, these little things really make the relationship feel safe.
Yeah.
where you don't feel threatened, you don't feel like you're going to shut down. Whatever I say, it's never good enough, it doesn't work, all of these things, then you start building a lot of contempt or resentment and frustration. So you end up shutting down, which a lot of people do.
Right.
So
we talk about fight styles or conflict styles is probably the word I would choose. But what happens when somebody is just looking for a fight? Like, they're just coming in hot and you're just the first one that they ran into, but they are looking for it and they will not let you rest. I mean, I guess it ultimately goes back to respect, but how does one show up in that kind of
that's such a great
energy?
Question. Such a great question. Because there are some complicated people out there.
Yeah.
And I would say, shut it down in a way that I am not willing to have this conversation to this level right now. When you're ready to actually have a real conversation, I want to discuss what's going on, but not in this way. It's not going to pay off. So there are little twitches that you can do. Like we talk a lot about now, the nervous system. And that's when I say, like, if you're angry or frustrated, you can tell in your body, you get like your shoulders come up, your pitch level might go higher.
You have a tell.
So it's like, again, these are conversations to be had ideally before at the beginning of a relationship.
But who does that?
It's
like your third date. It's like, so let me talk about what really, ticks me off. And like but who actually does that?
Well, I actually did that.
Did
so
you?
yes,
Okay.
I did, because as I mentioned earlier, I was single for such a long time. Nothing was working for me. And I was a massive self-development junkie. So I had been studying and reading and overdoing it. And so by the time I did meet my fiance, I was really ready to have something different than what hadn't paid off for me before.
Right.
So things like, chasing butterflies and passion and lust and everything had to be perfect and like going all in at the beginning. But I had decided I wanted to be in a relationship where we would hold each other to high standards. Now, what did that mean when we had the conversation? It was like, what do you mean you want to hold our relationship to high standards? So communication was important for me because I was the worst communicator ever. I would shut down. I would not say. Can you believe it? Like me, a bad communicator?
Yeah.
What? So it's possible to learn. It's a skill. It's a muscle we can all develop. And because again of the self-awareness piece, I was able to voice what it is that I wanted to experience. And I think that people, especially if you're going through divorce, have been through divorce, or you've been, through many relationships that have failed, it's really important to understand, what did I learn? How can I grow? What do I want to make sure this doesn't happen again? So even in my entourage, after seeing all these failed relationships, I was like, I don't want to experience that. I don't want to be in a relationship to argue, fight, or be jealous or insecure. So I had identified all these things prior. So there were things that were non-negotiables, not superficial stuff like height or like does he right? Where we often, when we're looking for a relationship, we're often making it about a partner versus thinking, how do I want to grow and evolve in relationship? And this is where people don't take the time to think like, okay, what's the communication style? How do I want to argue? How do I want to manage like the relationship with our kids when, I'll be thinking one way, he'll be thinking another. Yeah. So these are really important things to think about before. And I encourage people more and more. This is why I do the work I do. I want to get people before. Because when you're in it and you haven't done it and you're trying to ask your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend to change 2-3 years later, you're screwed.
Yeah. You develop
you
these
accepted
bad
it.
Hang on.
right?
Are you screwed? Or could you start to implement
Can you
some
teach
of
an old dog new tricks?
Good. Yes. As long as there are willingness with two partners. So typically there's like one that wants to change and the other one doesn't, right? Because we're, as human beings, we hate change. So great question. As long as there's willingness from both parties, everything is possible. Everything is possible to change, to update, to like whatever, but there needs to be a willingness from the two partners.
I wrote a quick note because I think that this is so important to reinforce that when you were entering into this dating scene, it wasn't what is this laundry list that my future partner may have, but it's how do I want to be in this relationship? Like, what's my own laundry list? So is it, do I feel safe? Or do I feel loved? Do I feel like whatever? I think that if people can hone in on how do I want to feel, as opposed to what are these maybe more tangible items like bank account or height or, waist size. It's more like, how do I want to show up in this relationship? Because I think we miss that. You know what I mean? We were brought up in the land of like Cosmos, top 10 ways to please your man. So like we were,
top
set
10
up for
ways
failure.
to win him back.
Advice ever.
But now that we get to, hopefully change as we mature, it is that. It's like, get some self-awareness, not to, beat the dead horse, but figure out who you want to be. And you will then attract that kind of person. That's what I think.
But
anyway.
I also wonder, when you're starting a relationship, you don't get to see how they're actually going to be until you're further along into it.
Wow.
I feel like
I feel like she's going to debunk this.
I feel like people put up their best foot forward.
It's like a job interview. You're not going to come in.
You're being courted. Everyone's trying to be on their, show their best selves. You don't actually see like the real personality until maybe, I don't know, a year in.
Girl, you hit it on the nail.
Yeah.
So it's science. That is proven
Ooh, there you go.
it takes a year to 2 to know if you're in a toxic relationship or not.
There you go.
Okay.
Wow,
So,
a year to 2.
Yeah, this is Dr. Nahir, the narcissist specialist. I can never
Okay.
remember her, but so because she was talking about narcissism and how that shows up later, oftentimes in a relationship, and it's too late. So she was saying that it takes a year to 2. What happens when you're a year and 2 years? You're probably already moved in together. You're maybe pregnant. You're getting engaged, whatever. So you do not know people within like a year, and that's why I say slow down.
Yes.
What's the rush? If you found your person, what's the rush of wanting to have to do everything and show all of your best right away? Because here's the thing, and this I tell my ladies or my men that are dating, it's like the behavior that you're showing now when you start dating, is that something you can keep up with?
Yes.
If you're messaging 155 times a day, is that something you can keep up with in the long run? You're not.
You're setting unreasonable expectations.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right? Like if you're
Absolutely.
flying them here and there every weekend, is that something you're going to keep up with? Whining and dining and all that stuff? Like, is that something that you can?
And I think that's where you see a lot of the issues too when relationships then produce a child. Because if you were someone who's like, I'm going to take care of my man and I'm going to, rub his feet every night and cook him every meal and really take care of it. And because you want to, like that, if that genuinely, derives self-worth or pleasure or what have you. So it's not in a bad way. Then a child comes and now you're doing all of that for your child. And the man's over there going like, where's my hot meal and my foot rub?
You're forgetting him.
You have screwed up those expectations. And then so without a conversation around, hey, the needs have changed.
Yes.
The amount of bandwidth I have to offer you has changed. If you can't communicate that, then there is going to be that resentment for sure.
But no one can. I feel like people who go into having children, the decision to have children, they don't see that ahead of it.
Yeah.
They don't see it until they have the kid.
Yeah.
So they
It's too
think,
late, yeah.
oh, we're having our first child, and they're just going to come and travel with us, and we're going to still go for our dinners, and we're gonna have our date nights. It's gonna be so cute. It's gonna be just so amazing, and we're all gonna we're gonna sleep when the baby's sleeping, and then it actually happens, and it's like nothing like you ever could have planned. So how does a relationship prepare for that?
So again, it's the fundamentals that are important. So if you it's like a foundation. If you're building a house, if you don't have a great foundation, what do you think is going to happen over the years? Things are going to crap. It's going to crumble, right? So those are the things. That's why you really have to change the way we perceive relationships and love. So first off, we're so in love with the idea of love. We don't even understand what that means. And when I wrote the book, that's how I started my research. I was like, what is love anyway? Yeah. The idea of love. So one of the questions that I always ask people is like, what is your relationship with love? And what do you want your relationship with love to be? Boom. People are like, I never thought about that.
No, I want to hear more.
Tell
Tell us more. What were their answers? I'm so curious.
What should it be?
What's your relationship? What's the
right answer?
There's no shoulds, right or wrongs. I think for me, this is just to create, again, self-awareness to understand, like, why am I showing up the way I am in relationship? And I'm sure you've had these conversations on one of your podcasts where our first example of love are our parents, right? So whether they were good, whether they were bad, whether they were there, whether they were not, the first example, it's like, this is how you will show up in relationship later. So subconsciously, you've registered in what you see. So I always say it's really important to understand the relationship you saw your parents have together and the relationship you developed with the the opposite sex, the male, because that's your first love. As a woman, your first love is your dad. So how was your dad? Who was your dad? How was he with your mom? How was he with you? Really important to understand that, because you will understand how you're showing up in relationship and what you're doing. So if you grew up in a household that there was always arguing, and your dad and mom would like shut doors and like tell each other off, right?
Silent
For
treatment.
you, yes. And then it's like you'd run in your room and like cry because, so for you, love represents a threat. It's not safe. So how do you think you end up showing up in relationship later? So if you don't understand the source of why you're acting the way you do subconsciously, because we can't work around that. Decisions are made for us until we're like, we can think for ourselves. So everything is decided for you between the age of 0 and 7. And now it's like, even they say full brain development for a child, it's like 22 years old, which is pretty late.
I mean, for men, it's like 42.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to ask yourself, like, what was my relationship with love? So for me, I lost my dad when I was very young. So I was such on a quest to be loved by a man. Like I just needed like the presence of a man, but that wasn't for the right reason. I can't just fill in a void, because I've never experienced it. So hence why relationships for me never worked out. I was always looking for emotionally unavailable men, because I was subconsciously protecting myself, because for me, men represented that they will leave you. Yes. So once you understand that, it's easier to say, okay, how am I going to rewire my brain, and how can I pay attention to my behaviors, my patterns, identify them, and just, again, be self-aware, observe yourself when you're trying to rewire.
And I think, if I just may jump in, especially for our listeners that are now raising kids in 2 separate homes, they're no longer with their partners. I think it's important to note that those early memories or those formative years, they don't have to mean what you see your 2 parents in the same home doing. I think you can still model a lot of healthy love, healthy communication, validating your children's feelings, being, prioritizing your own needs and your self-care, and all of those things are really, really important. I am never encouraging someone to stay in a relationship for the sake of the kids, because we talk about the broken home all the time, but if your home is filled with fighting and door slamming and silent treatment and eggshell walking,
toxicity,
that's a horrible way to raise your kids in that environment, right? So
you might not be able to give them that healthy role modeling until you get into 2 homes.
Exactly.
Right? Until you're able to actually be on your own and show them what healthy love actually looks like.
I just wanted to differentiate that, because there's probably a lot of folks that are like, no, I've ruined my kids, but you've not.
You've not. And I think,
note.
again, I always tell people, if you've been through it, for the best gift you can give your children is for you to learn this stuff and learn, grow from it, and be able to teach your children differently. Because if you haven't done the work and you're like going through it, with eyes shut down and don't want to kind of grow from it or develop your self-awareness, then you can't pass it on. So
and you're destined to repeat the same thing as well. So you have to learn.
Break the generational,
break it.
And talking about shutting down, I think your 5th one on your list was avoiding difficult conversations. So some people they're right in it, they're emotional, they want to hash it out, throw all the bad words out there. Others completely avoid difficult conversations. And that's a challenge.
Yes.
Yes.
I was actually doing a workshop on this last weekend. So avoiding hard conversations. So here's the thing. We all know we're in a mental health crisis, but we're in a loneliness epidemic. So 1 out of 2 people in North America are feeling lonely. So that's like 1 out of, we're 3 at the table. There's one of us that's feeling lonely. So I would say there's 3 ways to if you're going to have hard conversations. I always say, this started for me because I was the worst conversation. Like, no way, I'm gonna avoid every possible hard conversation. My best friend at the time, well, she still is, she was great at having hard conversations. She would call me out on my shit all the time. And it was not easy to receive or fun. But she says, she said this to me, and I will always remember this. She's like, Chantal, I love you. This comes from a genuine place. I love you so much. I want you to learn from this and grow from this. I say this with the truest of my heart, it's coming from a good place. So I say to people, if somebody you love, and this happens in friendships a lot. So when we're talking about relationship, it's not just relationship, romantic relationships, okay? All of this is applicable in any given relationship. It's really about if somebody that you really, really love and care for takes the time to say something to you, take the time to listen and to receive and say, you know what? Okay, this is not fun, but I would not be who I am today because of the stuff that she took the time to pull me aside and tell me. I used to be a control freak and react. And when things wouldn't go my way, I'd freak out on my girlfriends and say, what the hell are you girls doing? I organized this. She was like, how do you think that makes other people feel? Do you think that's actually okay? Because things don't go your way?
Right.
And I was like, but today I look back and I'm just like, oh my God, thank God she said that. I was a massive control freak. And who am I to own other people? I don't own anybody. And I say when we're practicing communication skills, find someone that you want to practice with because they are skills.
Yeah. So here's a question. We've hit on the 5. When I was going through this, noticed that a lot of these relationship killers, as you said, aren't just about romantic relationships, family of origin relationships, work colleagues, maybe, what have you, your children, etc. These 5 relationship killers can also kill your divorce. Yes. And they can also kill your co-parenting relationship afterwards. When we're in the relationship, though, we're a bit more incentivized, I think, to be like, let's work on this. We don't want to end up divorced. We want to work on our relationship. Let's really put some of these things into practice. When you're going through a divorce, you may not be as keen to want to do all these things, even though really we know it is in the best interest. Again, obviously, if you have children and you're with this person on an ongoing basis, how do we need to sort of flip the script a little bit and say this is an opportunity for people to learn and grow and develop their own personal attributes as opposed to linking it to a specific relationship? Is this just a sort of skill set that everyone should have generally to just show up to life better, regardless of the relationship? Is it worth taking the time to really invest and hone these skills and work these muscles?
1,000%.
Right?
1,000%. And we talked a little bit about kicking off the conversation, how this stuff should be taught to kids in school. I'm sorry, in high school, we should definitely screw algebra unless you're planning to be an engineer, but teach kids emotional intelligence and how to have hard conversations because they become better parents, they become better friends, they become better coworkers,
better humans, make
the last scene of Mean Girls where Tina Fey is the principal and has all the girls standing up and talking and sharing their feelings. And it's this aha moment. I always think about that because if we could do that, we could really avoid conflict.
Yes, we
could
could.
change the world.
And then it's putting our egos, which is often what happens, right? When we're going through divorce, we're dealing with hurt, we're got bruised, got hurt, and I don't want him to have a better life now because he left me. But we're not thinking about, so if you have children, especially, I always say it's not about, remember what I said at the beginning, the threesome thing? It's applicable here too.
Yeah.
It's about the relationship. Yeah. What kind of relationship do you want to have and stay? And I think one thing that we haven't been educated on as well is for people to actually have healthy divorce and separations.
Yes, girl, preach.
It is possible. Yeah. I have tons of friends today that have such great relationships with their exes because it's it was about the kids. Now, is it going to be that way within the first year, 24 hours? Of course, there's it's stages of grief, right? It takes time,
but it takes work.
It takes work. Yeah. And it's possible. And I'd rather be in a state of being a little bit more loving, again, kind, versus holding on to anger and jealousy. These things are so toxic and low vibration. Yes. And your kids see this too. They feel this stuff. And here's the thing. Yeah. When you are able to have hard conversations, in-depth human connection moves from a 2 to a 10. The connection that I have with my friends and listen, I've put this into practice in my relationship, but now in all of my relationships, the quality of friendships that I have with women today specifically is incredible. incredible, because I'm able to have the hard conversation and say, hey, listen, I need to share this with you. I love you. My intention is not to hurt you, but I have to share how I'm feeling because XYZ happened. And it's a conversation. It's not a threat. And I think that we didn't answer your questions. Like, when do you have those conversations? You don't have them when you're in the heat of the moment, when your emotions are high. Yeah. You have to take a time out, breathe. I often say to people, write it down. Yeah. If you are afraid to be able to express yourself, how you're going to express yourself, write it down and read your letter, read your note. There's nothing wrong with that. Find what works for you, especially if you're not used to communicating and you really struggle, right? So I want to give an example on how hard these muscles can be. One of my things was vulnerability. And I think a lot of women can relate to the story, especially today. We have a lot of like type A, I got it all, woman power thing. But the vulnerability component is also a thing that you can't really develop in-depth relationships if you don't develop your vulnerability. So my roommate at the time was like, Chantal, if you can't be vulnerable with your own friends, how the hell do you expect to be in a relationship one day? And it was an aha moment for me because I was like, she's so right. How can I start practicing this? And I called my best friend that called me out on my shit. Thank God, And I said, you know what, Tina, one day I'm going to call you. I'm going to share something. And this is what I need from you. It's going to be really hard for me to express myself because I'm not used to. I need you to be quiet. I need you to not interrupt me. I need you to not give me advice unless I ask you. And I just need you to hold space. She was like, got it. I communicated what I needed. And she was like, okay, do you know how long it took me to make that call? And this is the friend that I trust, that I felt safe with. 4 months.
Wow. Oh, wow.
4 months to make that call. And I remember I still sweat and anxiety of calling her. I'm like, okay, Tina, today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to share my vulnerability of what's going on. And I remember getting off that call and feeling so much better. I was like, why is that so hard? It felt so good.
The relief of unloading.
Exactly. And then feeling safe. And then my friend knew what to do. And I say to people all the time, especially in relationship, ask your partner, what do you need from me right now? What
do you want advice? Do you want quiet? Do you want a solution? Yeah. What is it?
Don't make assumptions. Don't decide for them. Well, I know no. What do you need from me right now? It's so powerful. And when anybody asks me that, I'm just like, whoa, somebody cares. They know what they're doing. So I don't think anyone will respond, well, I don't know. Well, that could happen, but it's like, work on your self-awareness. So I would say, that took me about almost a year to get comfortable with her. And then I moved on to a second friend, a third friend. Then I started to be able to do that at work with some coworkers. So by the time I got into my relationship, because I was with an old school provider, a guy that just wanted, I was able to receive, because a lot of people can't receive it either, right? So again, it goes both ways. You need to work on your vulnerability to be able to receive the good that can come out of it. So
I am hopeful with the generations that are coming up, and I'm hopeful that the women now are breaking that cycle, as we said. And for those that need some extra help, go get the Raise Your Love Signal and learn how to properly communicate and how to properly have conflict and do all the work, because it is work. It is and work. It's a practice. It's constantly evolving.
Constant work.
We as humans are constantly evolving and changing. I think the tricky thing too with a partnership is you're not always at the same level at the same time.
You're usually not.
Exactly. In fact, you're most likely not.
You're usually not. Yeah. So sometimes one person has to work a little harder and pick up the slack for the other, and that's okay.
And it is okay and expected, because that's the point of a partnership, so that when you're down, they can hopefully pick you up. And
you
vice
can't just
versa.
do all the work in the beginning and then expect it to last.
Yes.
I think people think, okay, we had this great foundation and we're ready to go, and then they stop trying.
No, it's a full-time job.
And
that's where I think that I would add a relationship killer.
Yeah.
Is that people think they find their person, they're in a relationship, we're good. Yeah. I hear it all the time.
That's it.
Oh, I don't know. I'm fine. We've been together for 2 years. We don't need help. And I'm like, actually, this is where you should be getting the help.
Totally.
Because you're in a great position. So learn the tools so when you do hit a rock bottom, because it will happen.
Yeah.
I'm 6 years in my relationship. It's happened.
Yes.
And I teach this shit.
Right. I know. I say that all the time.
About it because I'm like, do not take it for granted. And it's interesting how we're so defined by relationships. They're so important to us. And it's the only place in our life we do not take time
to work
to learn, work, or get educated on.
Like you don't
How
stop
crazy
working.
is that?
You don't
It's
stop working out
bonkers.
because you've reached your ideal,
exactly.
figure or whatever. Okay, now I'm good. I'm in a good place. I'm just never going to work out again.
Yeah. If
No.
only.
But like that's just not how it works.
It is not. No, you got to keep working on it. This was so wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank you,
Thank
Chantal.
you.
I loved
Thank
this
you.
conversation. You can tell by the size of Amanda's and my smile.
Yes,
how
we had
much
a good-
fun we had. No, it's
Always
so
happy
good.
to come back,
Yes.
especially
Thank
with the pink
you.
mic.
Right?
Oh my God, we love it. We love it. Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.